Welcome back to the Joseph Graham Show. Today, I'm super excited. I have Meagan Ryan with me. Now, I met you through some of my dear friends, Ashley and Brian Bogart. Normally, I would say Brian Bogart, but Ashley sent me the email, so I'm going to give her the
Yes.
props on it to give us kind of this introduction. So we've talked a little bit. I know I'm going to be interviewing your husband soon as well, but give me a little bit about your background, who you are, and who you help.
Yeah, so my name is Megan Ryan. I am a registered dietitian by trade. Personally, I am a huge outdoors person. I like to mountain bike, I like to hike, I like to be active, I like to run. I like to just do all sorts of things to experience life in that way, and being outdoors is a great way to do that. But like I said, I'm a registered dietitian, and a lot of my background is in disordered eating, as well as mindful eating, intuitive eating, all of that. I come from the bodybuilding background. I started in bodybuilding as when I started getting into fitness, and that actually started my journey to becoming a registered dietitian. So that has led me to more of the mindful eating approach. So that's who I help, is people that are trying to come from, let's say, a more meticulous or like rigid way of going about their nutrition to something that's a little bit more fun, a little bit more easygoing, a little bit more intuitive, and helps them understand how to fit that into their lifestyle specifically.
No, I love that. So you had a couple of different things here that I want to go different ways, but let's start here. You said
Okay.
that you were in fitness and you're
Yes.
into nutrition and all that. Have you always like just been the active girl from the start? Were you like into sports and stuff, or did you just fall into fitness? How did that happen?
So I guess technically I've kind of always been into like sports, but I've never had that be as much of my part of my identity as it is now, say like now that I'm in my 30s. But yeah, growing up, I played basketball, I played softball, right? And then I graduated from high school and I didn't do any kind of sports, or exercise like at all. I think maybe I was just burnt out from it and I was like, I don't, no, thank you. And then I found my way back to it in my mid 20s. And that's where I was like, oh, okay, this is actually making me feel a lot better. And then from there, it has just continued to evolve to kind of what it is now, to where I get outdoors, and that's really my main fuel source for being active. It's just getting out and experiencing life.
No, I love that. I love that. We were talking before the show. I like to hike and semi-run. I more walk than I run at this point.
Yeah.
But like being outside and in the sun and in the mountains and just doing things has always been a fun thing for me as well. So wait, you were talking about nutrition and stuff like that, and everyone hears all the diets. There's the keto diet. There's the any diet you can think of. Like there's just tons of them. Is it that you follow like a food protocol with people and help them that way, or do you have like a certain diet plan that you think one size fits all? How do you approach that?
Sure. Yeah. So I take a very individualized approach. Honestly, like you said, there's the keto diet, there's all these different diets that are out there. And from my personal experience and from experience that I have working with clients, that those types of diets are very rigid. They actually don't allow for us to live our life, right? Because they require us to maybe not go out with friends as often, or not just, it doesn't have a lot of room for living in those. You have to be very detailed, you have to be very specific, you have to be on point, otherwise you're like failing at the diet. My approach is very opposite from that. There are obviously like general nutrition guidelines that I have people follow that are evidence-based, but as far as like application of those, it's very individualized, right? So like how somebody's going to hit their protein goal in a day is going to look very different depending on their lifestyle. So that's kind of what I help people work through, is like, okay, it doesn't have to be exactly one way. There's actually a lot of ways for us to be creative and find different solutions for you to meet your goals.
That's interesting because I've had a lot of trainers on here. I have a lot of people on here. A lot of them are very rigid. You have to do this.
Yeah.
And I've been through all the things. So I've been up to over 200 pounds, down to 170. And it's been the whole like I've done the strict diet before, I've done the portion control, done all that stuff. But like you said, you get to the point you're like, you go out to a friend's house, oh crap, can I have this piece of pizza or can I have this adult beverage with them? Am I gonna? And also, I like the idea of building a life you can wake up to living that's healthy, but still enjoy some of the stuff. Like if you want to eat ice cream every once in a while, I'm assuming you can plan that in. So how do you help someone with that? Because there's a lot of different people. Like I'm a pretty active person. Other people I know aren't active at all. Is it based off of their activity level, or how do you structure that?
Yeah, so I kind of live by mottos and I'm like you, right? Like I came from a very similar place in bodybuilding, like that you have very specific goals you have to track meticulously, like, and that is not applicable to everybody. Like I honestly don't think most people should be living that way or approaching their nutrition in that way, right? Like because that's not the lifestyle that you're actually wanting to live. But I think we go into it with that mindset because that is what's shown in the media is bodybuilders get all the attention in fitness, right? Because they're shredded and they're ripped. And so most people go into it believing that that's what it takes to be healthy and that's what it takes to get to their goals. When in reality, it's like, no, we have to learn how to make certain nutritional concepts fit into your life. And so the way that I kind of structure that is like all foods fit, right? Like that's kind of a motto that I live by is all foods fit. And it's not about restriction, it's about addition. So it's like, okay, you want to have some ice cream. How do we make that a little bit more nutrient dense for you? Or how do we play around with what you eat earlier in the day so we make sure that you're getting all the nutrients and all the nutrition you need leading up to having that ice cream? So there is no guilt around it. So hopefully that makes sense. It's more of an intuitive eating model, right? It's very different than like eat these specific foods, these specific calories, and more of like, okay, let's listen to your body and tune into those cues that it's telling you that it needs.
Well, no, I mean, I'm into that. So like I before I used to do, like I said, the strict diets, and then I did the I just don't give up. I'm gonna eat what I want diet, which is not
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
I think it's weird because there's times when I'm like, I just want vegetables, and I know I want vegetables. This is weird, or I want protein, or I want this or that. I'm not really the. My wife is more into sweets. I'm more into the savory, that type of thing, or like say a good bourbon or scotch. I think everyone's palate's a little bit different with what they like to do. So when you have people come in, I'm going to ask this question. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to it, but I want to know. So with men and women, we need different nutrients and things, or is it fairly similar?
It really depends on activity level. Like, and I mean, yeah, in general, men are going to need a little bit more energy because just that baseline tend to carry more muscle mass. Their frame size is usually a little bit bigger, right? So a baseline, they're going to need more calories. But again, it really just does depend on activity level too, is the main thing. But by no means, I want to be clear here, especially for any women that are listening, that doesn't mean we don't need to be eating. And we don't need to be
Agreed.
eating enough because that's something I see a lot of in women is that we believe that we're smaller, that we shouldn't be eating, adequately, and that we should be following all of these low calorie diets to maintain our weight. And that's actually very false.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, you know, it's funny because, like I said, I've done some of the workouts and stuff, and I know a lot of successful driven women. But a lot of times, like you said, like, have you ate today? Did you eat anything? Like they're like
Right?
eating these little portions, and I'm like, isn't it true that sometimes you actually need to eat more to lose the weight or get to where you want to
Yes.
be sometimes, or your body will go into starvation mode? And again, I'm asking the question. I don't know.
To a degree, yes. It really depends on your history. So if you are someone who has a history of dieting, that actually can have some negative effects on your metabolism to where your baseline metabolism, it's called your BMR, is really low. And the way that we fix that is by increasing energy because by eating more, you actually increase your metabolism. So it really depends on your history with things. That's definitely not a blanket statement for everybody, but that is something I see a lot of, especially in women and men. I've seen it in men too, that are just, chronic dieters. And to get out of that, we actually have to learn how to eat properly and eat at maintenance for a while to get ourselves out of that. And once you do that, you can actually see some weight loss. But again, that's like a very, very specific type of person that applies to.
Yeah. So if we're talking about people that just want to be healthy, like I'm 47, I'm not looking to be shredded anymore. That's
Right.
not my goal. My goal is when I'm 97 or 87, I can still throw my grandkids in the pool, run around and be healthy. What is just some good ideas of fitness, maybe foods that would be helpful, that type of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, so when you're talking about going from like physique goals to longevity goals, like that's kind of what I hear you describing, right? I actually, and this is something I work with my clients on, is learning something that's called interoceptive awareness, which is tuning into our body, because our body's always giving us cues on what it's needing, right? If you're tired all day, that doesn't mean we need an extra cup of coffee. That maybe means we didn't sleep well the night before, or maybe we're not eating enough, or maybe we're dehydrated, right? So that's something I work on with a lot of my clients on, let's just figure out the puzzle of what your body's trying to tell you. And that's that interoceptive awareness piece. And then the second part to that is interoceptive responsiveness, meaning we're able to identify those cues and then act on them appropriately. And so that's really the key to longevity, is like, okay, there's some gentle nutrition that comes along with that, right? Making sure we're getting enough protein, enough fiber-rich carbohydrates, we're getting enough fruits and vegetables, stay hydrated, right? Like all of those good things. But it's also listening to our body and not overdoing it. You mentioned fitness, right? Like we can overtrain if we're not listening to our bodies and listening to the signals that is giving us, right? So that's really the key, such a hack for longevity too, like being able to listen to your body and be that innately aware of what it's needing in any given moment.
Yeah, I think and I only speak from a man because I'm a man. I'm not going to speak for a man. I don't know. But like with me, sometimes I still think I'm 47 and like I can still go and do the 8 mile walk or the hike, or I can still go and do kickboxing, which I do kickboxing sometimes, like not getting kicked in the face, but like the workouts, where you kick the tie and the chair back. That I'm clarifying so people don't think I'm actually throwing punches at people. I'm not there anymore. But what is it? Is there how do you, I don't know how I want to answer this. How do you know your limits? Because I think as a man, a lot of times we still think we're 20-year-olds and we can do whatever we want. And I think the ladies are a little bit smarter with that. Maybe they're not, but again, I'm not going to speak for women. But like, is there a way to, I don't even know how I know what I'm trying to say, but it's not coming out right. How do I make it to where I can still have fun, but not push myself too much? What are warning signs I should look out for? Maybe that's what I was trying to ask. Sorry, that was a
Sure.
really long question.
That's okay. Yeah, I think something also that's really not talked about with anything in fitness or nutrition is the role that those play too, is in our recovery, right? Like that's something that's really not talked about a lot is, we go out and do the exercise and we're eating well, right? We're not talking about the other 20, 30 hours of the day where your body is trying to recover from that 1 or 2 hours of activity, right? And depending on the intensity, like your recovery is going to be even more important. And so some of the warning signs, like it really just depends on the type of activity that you're doing for one. But just in general, we're just speaking like in general terms here, is like, how are you sleeping at night, right? How's your appetite regulation? How's your mood, right? How do you feel like you're able to function on a day-to-day basis? Because those all can be cues that maybe you're not recovering properly enough. And if we're not recovering, then that's what leads to injury. And that's what leads to not eating enough and maybe not fueling ourselves enough either too. So those are just like in general, like if you're just not feeling great after a bout of intense exercise, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe it just means you need to eat a little bit more and try to sleep a little bit more too. But yeah, other specific red flags, it really just depends on the activity I think that you're doing and like who you are as an athlete or who you are as whatever type of enthusiast that you are. But in general, I would tell people to look at their recovery and how they feel, like that perception, right? That interoceptive awareness around their recovery.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think most people that listen to this show are more driven people. So we like to do extreme things. So it's not like
Yeah.
the couch potato people, because like
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, business owners, athletic people that live, like people that listen to this show probably are the ones that are like, oh, I can go do the 10 mile hike, or I can go do this thing, and then we pay
Yes.
for it later. That's why I was asking that question.
And I mean, I'm that person too. Okay. Like I'm training for a half marathon. I haven't done a half marathon in like 5 years, right? So
Mhm.
I'm also having to reinforce these lessons for myself because I also identify as in that group of people of like, I just want to go experience life to the fullest. I think that's what that comes down to. But we have to just remind ourselves, like, okay, in order to do that and do it several times into the future, we have to pay attention to these cues that our body is telling us. And that doesn't mean maybe that we need an extra rest day. That doesn't mean we can't go out and do these things into the future. It just means maybe we need to put a pin in it and just pause for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just hard for people like us because thinking about like I've done 75 hard. I finished it twice. I've tried it 6 times. I did it in the summer in Texas and I did it in the winter in Texas. I live in Arizona now by that time. So it's super hot, super cold. I like pushing extreme. So when someone tells me I can't do something, I'm 9 times out of 10 going to push that because that's
Yeah.
just kind of my makeup. How do you help people when, because I'm sure you've dealt with it. How do you
Yeah.
help people that are super driven, super thrill seekers, super intentional, pull it back a little bit, or maybe not pull it back, but guide them so they don't just jump off the cliff. At least they have a parachute.
Yeah, I think it's just guiding them through reflections on like, because a lot of times, and I, like I said, I can be that way too. Like I have been that way in the past. So this is also coming from personal experience, right? I think it's just important to continue to pull yourself into the present moment and really reflect on, okay, how am I actually feeling right now? How is this affecting my life on a daily basis? Are there more pros than cons right now? And then just continuously doing that just to make sure like, okay, what you're doing is okay, right? If someone wants to go do 75 hard or wants to go try an extreme challenge, like I'm all for that. But it's just, I want you to do it safely. Like that's the only thing. I just wanted you to do it safely. And if you genuinely feel like you're going to get something out of it, like go for it. But don't ever lose sight of your recovery in that process or what your body's telling you, right? Because those are the true health indicators while you're going through whatever challenge you choose to take on.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that it's just a lot of times in this space, people think that they need to keep going, 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 and sometimes it's better to slow
Yeah.
down to speed up.
Yes, exactly. Patrick uses that phrase all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard though because like looking at my life now, I'm actually in better shape now than I was in my 30s, and I'm doing more stuff. And like I said, I want to always explore and do all these things. But I also need to have the ability to go and actually be in the moment, not get that done and run to the next one, get that done and run to the next one. So you
Yeah.
said you're training for a half marathon. So this intrigues me because so am I. I did one last year with my wife. We walked a half marathon in Hawaii. This year, I was going to do the one in Hawaii, but I'm actually going to push it out a little bit because with falling, like we talked about. Oh, I did. Yeah, in case you know, I fell hiking recently, which made me go from being able to do 6, 7, 8, 10 miles to about 2 because I fell on my tailbone, so I had to heal that up. So it's kind of like it sucks. But with doing the half marathon and all that type of thing, what have you ever done one before, or is this the first time you've done one in a long time?
It's been a while since I've done one. I did one about, I think it was 5 years ago, and we did it in Moab, Utah, and it was beautiful. It was a great experience. But definitely didn't know as much as I do now about sports nutrition. So my approach is completely different than what I did last time. So it's been kind of fun to just play around with different fueling techniques and um, nutrient timing type stuff, which is fun. It's definitely different type of stuff for myself that I haven't explored in the past. So yeah, this will be a new way of approaching it for me since I've done one in the past.
Gotcha. So you actually have it planned out better. Like when I did it last year, my wife and I just like, oh, we're gonna do one, and we walked it for the most part, ran a little bit, and then like at each station we did the stuff. How are you? What steps are you taking to enhance what you're doing this time compared to the last time?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me this time is fueling before my long runs, like no matter what. And I run early in the morning, so that can be a challenge for me. And I also deal with like a sensitive stomach. So anytime I exercise after I've eaten food, I my stomach gets really upset. So I'm just constantly playing around with different foods to see what fits best for me right now. But it's definitely getting in enough food, like fuel before any type of long run. And then also like really playing around with different types of gels and the little like honey stinger waffles or
Hmm.
some kind of like energy chews and electrolytes and stuff while I'm out running because like I live in the Southwest. It's hot out here right now. And definitely sweating a lot. And we're also at elevation here in New Mexico. So I live at about 6,000 feet above sea level. So being that high in elevation also increases your risk for dehydration. So I have to be like really on top of my hydration game with electrolytes and all of that. So I'm just paying way, way, way more attention to um, just my nutrition while I'm training. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, paying attention to my recovery. Like there have been days where I'll go out for a long run, and then that following evening, I'm not sleeping well because I'm waking up because I'm hungry. So that tells me I'm not eating enough during the day, right? So that's just that constant feedback that my body is giving me also. So I'm taking all of those variables in just to try to play around with things. And I have noticed a significant difference in my ability to run longer, like faster for longer, the better my fueling is.
I know that makes sense. And I've tried around with them. I've done the honeycomb ones. I've done the gel things. I don't know if I always do it right, but like I've tried different ones and some were like really good and some were like, why did I eat
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
But no, because you live in like the Albuquerque area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just out there about a month ago. Went up to Santa Fe. I have a client up there, the Santa Fe ski school, but or
Right.
ski resort, ski school. Wow. It's really beautiful there, but yeah, like even walking up there felt so much different. Like here in Arizona, it's like 1,000. You guys are way
Yeah.
up higher. Um, but I think that goes into knowing the region you're in and knowing what your body's
Mhm.
capable of and paying attention to the signs. Because, like when I was in Montana and I was hiking there, I had to fuel myself differently than like when I was in Texas, because Texas is stupid flat where I used to live. So like doing it there, it I think people don't always consider all the different factors of how things affect the world around them and their food and their nutrition and all that. Are there any foods that you just would say, no, this, you just don't eat it, it's trash? Like you could say McDonald's, I'd be okay with that because that's probably trash. Sorry, McDonald's, if you want to sue me, your food is probably bad. Go ahead.
Honestly, no. That the only foods that I tell people not to eat are ones that they're allergic to or have an intolerance to. That's really it. I believe that all foods fit. Like if I go out for a long run or like on Sunday, for example, Patrick and I went out, my husband and I went out to go ride our bikes. I rode 20 miles, he rode 25 miles. Fast food where your higher energy needs, it plays a role. And if it can help you get in extra calories without a lot of volume, and it's a 1, 2 time thing a month, like that's not going to kill you. You know what I mean? But it's going to help with your recovery because you're actually getting in the calories that you need. So that's what I mean by like all foods fit. By no means is that am I saying, hey, go out and eat McDonald's every single day, like on the days that you train. I'm saying on those days where maybe you're having a hard time getting in enough food, it can actually be a tool to help you with that. And that's Patrick and I did that often. Like we trained for a 100-mile bike race, right? We did that a couple years ago. And when you're riding on an 80-mile training day, like it's really hard to get enough food,
Yep.
especially whole nutrient dense foods. They're lower in calorie and they have a lot of volume. So, those fast foods, they can be a tool to help you get in enough calories to make sure you're recovering properly. So that's why, like I always tell people, all foods fit. It just really depends on the situation and the circumstance.
Yeah. No, I like how you put that though, because you're not going to McDonald's or some crazy place every day. But
No.
if you've exerted that much energy, it's not as big
Yeah.
of a deal because your body's gonna get what it needs and get rid of the other. No, that
Mhm.
that makes sense. I just because I'm always hearing people say, Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that." And in reality, well, I mean, there's probably a few things that, like, if you're allergic, that makes sense. But I'm just sitting here thinking of all the different times that people probably have felt guilty because they did it one time. But again, it's like anything in moderation is okay. It's just when we take it to the extreme.
Yeah, it's like I tell people all the time, it's like if you go to the gym one time, is that gonna give you the physique that you want? No. So if you eat fast food one time, is that gonna throw your goals off too? No, it is not anything to worry about. It is like you said, and there's a phrase that goes along with it. It's like the dose makes the poison, right? So if you're eating fast food every single day for the majority of your meals, you're obviously not going to be getting in the nutrients that you need. And so that's where that can pose a problem. And you're probably overeating calories and all of that. But if it's a every once in a while thing, or like if you're going out to eat, for example, and you're being social with friends and you're having a good time, that's nourishing not only physically, but on a holistic sense, like you're nourishing your social relationships, your social health, you're nurturing your environmental health by being in an environment that you like, right? So that's how food fits in other ways. And it's a more nuanced conversation that's not really being had. It's a lot easier to say, don't eat this, don't eat that, than to have these nuanced conversations. But obviously that just comes with social media and like short form content and all that kind of stuff too. But yeah, it is definitely, to your point, like a more nuanced conversation for sure.
Yeah. I like the approach because then you can actually go and live life and have fun. It's just
Yeah.
don't go and drink 10 or 12 adult beverages on the weekend. That's probably not gonna be good. But if you have one, it's not
Yeah.
as big of a deal. Maybe, I think it's just we have to learn moderation, and a lot of us are extreme one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, like taking it back to the concept of interoceptive awareness, right? Like really tuning into how your body's feeling. If you're eating fast food that often, you probably don't feel great, right? And if we're tuning into that, you're going to be able to know, like, if you eat mostly whole foods and you mostly eat healthy and you eat fast food, you're going to feel a difference, right? Like it may be a tool in that instance to help you get in enough calories, but you will feel a difference. And you'll start to crave those more whole nutrient dense foods eventually if you are tuned into that. That's why I always say, like, as a skill, that's so important, because it makes it easier to do that moderation bit that you're talking about. Because your body, if you once you tune into what your body's actually needing, it's like, oh, I'm actually craving vegetables today. Like I'm gonna give myself some vegetables, you know? And then sometimes it's like, yeah, I would love a cheeseburger. Like I'm gonna go get a cheeseburger. But it really does help with that moderation piece.
You know what's funny though? It seems like the bad stuff it's really easy to tune into, and the good stuff
Yeah.
is not. And I've ate healthy for a long time, and there's times I've not. But I've noticed this, like I understand the waves because, like, once I get my nutrition down and I get my foods going correctly, then I crave them. But if I start eating pizza and burgers all the time, I'm like, oh, I want them all the time. So it's
Yeah.
just that whole balancing it out. I like that. So I want to shift a little bit here because you're in business with your husband as well. You guys are a team and all.
Yes.
How does that dynamic work? Because I know some, like my parents did this. They worked together all their lives, with different things. Once they started managing, uh, like or not hotels, storage facilities and stuff like that. My wife and I, we love each other. We could not work together. We like to have our space. How's that dynamic working for you guys with that? Because I know that's kind of a different dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, I personally love it. Patrick and I are passionate about the same things. We're driven by the same things. We have similar goals in life we want to have a similar impact on the world. So it makes working together um pretty easy for the most part, right? And we have our own rooms. We're separated for most of the day, right? But when we tell people that we work together, they're like, "You guys spend a lot of time together." I was like, yeah, I mean, to me, it's like not a big deal. Because we do like it's not like he's sitting in the room with me all day. But I think on a big picture wise, it's we do have similar passions and we want to have this a similar impact on the world. And so that's very motivating to do what we're doing, and to help people in the way that we're helping people. But I do think to work with your spouse like that, you have to have those key values and like why you're doing business together. Because that's what really has laid the foundation for us.
No, I love that. So, what impact do you want to have in the world? You said it 3 times.
Um, I want to get people, let's see, how do I want to word this? I want to get people out of dieting. I want them to start living their lives and I want them to stop obsessing with food. That is my goal, is to help people start living their lives because it's similar to my journey. When I started out in fitness, food and fitness consumed every thought of my day. And then now it's like, okay, why am I doing this? It's because I want to get outdoors, because I want to go have experiences. It's because I want to live life. I want to help people through that transition, because it's very freeing and it's very empowering. And Patrick is the same way with movement. That's very something that he's very encouraged by and empowered by is to, with movement, again, it's like you don't live your life just in the gym, you live it outside the gym. So how do we get people to translate the skills they're learning in the gym to outside the gym so they can go and live their life?
No, I love that. I'm always talking about helping people wake up to a life they love living. That's my
Yeah,
goal. I want people to
exactly.
do things that they want to do that they enjoy. No rules. I don't
Yes.
care if you want to be a multimillionaire. I don't care if you want to make 100,000, 5,000. I don't care as long as you're happy and content doing the things you love doing. No, I love that a lot. So what's next for you? What, like, I know you guys are making moves and all, like, when building this impact and helping people, what are you looking to accomplish in the next little bit? Is there any like programs or things that you're doing right now to make that happen?
Yeah, so we have our 6 month core program that we work people through just with nutrition and helping them get at a good baseline with nutrition. Like we've talked about today, it's the approach that I've described today. So that's kind of the main way that we're working with people. We work with them either 6 months, a year, depending on what they're needing. And then on top of that, we have a free Facebook group where we do live trainings once a month. Second Tuesday of every month, we'll do a live training in our groups, and then we're also doing fitness challenges every few months. That hasn't been on like a regular cadence yet, but we're trying to make that on a more regular cadence. So just different ways to get into our world and our philosophy, and just different entry points in doing so.
I love that. We're not done, but since you mentioned it, where can people find that? Because I like it when you tell about it, they can just kind of click on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in anything, our fitness challenge, joining our Facebook group, you can find me on Instagram at mryan_nutrition. I have a link in my bio with all of the things. Our website is also on there. Excuse me. And you can find an application for coaching there as well. So yeah, everything is in my link in my Instagram.
No, that is awesome. I love that a lot. So here's my next question, just because I find it fun. I'm going to tell you first. I want to find out how you guys connect with Ashley and Brian because they're amazing
Okay.
people. But
Yes.
I have to tell this story, and he's heard me say, I've said this on the podcast with him, but when I first met Brian, I was at an event, another buddy of mine's, and I literally avoided him because I knew he was going to read my mail. So I waited, then I got him on my podcast and talked, and now we're great friends. But how did you guys connect with Ashley and Brian? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so Patrick is a former client of Brian's. And so that's how I like a one-on-one client with Brian. And so that's how I met him, is through Patrick working with him. And then we all just kind of really hit it off, and I joined their community that they have. And then we joined another program of theirs. And so we're clients of theirs, but also a really nice friendship has developed as a result. So that's how we're connected, and yeah, they're awesome people.
Same, same. Like I met him at an event, had him on my podcast, became a client of his, became a really good friend of his. Now I live about, I think, 30, 40 minutes away from him, and I bug him all the time. He lets me get away
Nice.
with it, so it's okay.
Excellent. Very
So
good.
I have this question. I like to ask this sometimes because you're someone I haven't talked to, like nutrition wise stuff. I've had like, fitness coaches, but not someone that really digs into nutrition in life. But if you could do this. Here's the weird question. You can go back in time as far as you want. You can go forward in time as far as you want. You get to meet one person, stay with them for a year, learn anything you want, and then bring that knowledge back here. Who would you go to? What would you learn?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. You can go anytime in the future or the past.
Yep, wherever you want to go, no rules.
Oh man. Um, Business wise, I think at this point in time, I would, oh my gosh, spend a whole year. If I could spend a whole year with Gary Vaynerchuk, I would do it. That would be amazing. I feel like I would learn so much from him and his community. And like I've gone to two of his conferences, and we're going to his conference in August. My husband and I are just really big advocates of his and big fans. I just feel like the community he's built through social media and just using authenticity to do so is the type of impact that we want to have. And so I just feel like the lessons that I could learn from him spending that amount of time would just be insane. So I think that's who I would go with for sure.
No, that's awesome. I like Gary. Gary's great. I've read his books. I started listening to his. It wasn't. I don't even think it was called a podcast at the time when he was doing his thing. There was podcasts, but it wasn't really that like on YouTube and all that. He's phenomenal. I like his stuff. Jab,
Yeah.
jab, jab, cross. Yeah, he's
Yes,
a cool
yeah,
dude.
and I just appreciate the authenticity and the transparency and like I've met him a couple times and like who he is in real life translates to on camera and I just really appreciate that too.
Which I love. I love that because a lot of times people have a persona on camera, then you
Exactly.
meet in person, you're like,
Yeah.
who are you? So
Yeah,
no, I think that's great. So
exactly.
before I let you go, is there anything else that we missed? I know we talked about fitness a little bit. We talked about activities. We talked about different things. But anything that the listeners that you wanted to leave them with?
Yeah, I think, you know, if there's anything, like obviously health is such a big part of business, right? Like we have to be healthy inside and out in order to pursue our entrepreneurial path. And so I guess my parting words of wisdom is just to always make sure that your health is at the center of how you navigate. Let it be your compass in how you navigate the world and in business. And just making sure that that's something that's always preserved moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan, for being on the show. And like she said, make your health a priority because you only have one life
Mhm.
to live. Wake up to a life you love living and enjoy it because at the end of the day, you're not going to worry about money or anything else. You're going to worry about the experiences you did or didn't have. Until next
Exactly.
time, go be amazing.